Welcome back to the SRM 3D Prints channel. My name is Tim. So today we're taking a look at printer number 3. I bought, yes, 3 of these identical printers from overseas. They're one of the cheapest printers on the market that has a bed that's bigger than 220 by 220. This is a 220 by 270 millimeter bed. And again, they're really inexpensive printers, but they have a few issues. One of the issues that this one had, and there's a little guide right up here, is to keep the filament off of this knob. Because when the head would go wide extremes, and because of where I have the filament up above, it would rub this knob and adjust the speed on the printer. And that's really, really bad, and I actually had some runaways on printer number 1 years ago. So I have a little guide for this printer, so that will never be a problem. Just nice, to make it look a little nicer, I also added in this cable guide and whatnot. I also added in a leveling wheel, so it makes it a lot easier to fine-tune the bed height, because before you had to loosen up screws and shift stuff around. It's just not a really nice system. But as soon as printer number 3 got assembled, I immediately had some problems. The first being the micro SD slot on the main board. Unless you were physically putting pressure on it to hold the thing in place, it wouldn't make contact. You couldn't load anything on here and actually print with it. The other issue is most of the time this limit switch right here thinks it's depressed. So I got the extruder all the way over here. I'm going to go hit position, and I'm going to home the machine. Okay, so now it's in home position 1. Now I'm going to hit it again. Every time you home it, because it thinks this switch is always pressed, it keeps walking over further and further. And now I've tried unplugging the switch, I've tried everything I can do, and what I've been doing just to get by is every time I get done with a print, and we'll go, I would just take and push the extruder all the way over, hard up against that switch, so then it started in the right position. But it's getting to be really irritating. I'm tired of it. I want this thing to work the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to break out a brand new board. Now, unfortunately, these boards don't come pre-configured for this printer. There's no way to get them. I tried. That's how I ended up with this board in particular. Because this was actually my second attempt to purchase a replacement board for it. Other thing that kind of sucks with these boards, when they come right out of the box, they don't have support for this display. You have to use one of the older displays. So, and that's one of those things I learned when I was messing with printer number 1, who actually lost a main board. So what we're going to do is we're going to power this off, disconnect the filament. I'm going to swap out the board, and then I'm going to connect up this old display. It just has a single connector on the back. And then we're going to take this whole lot into the house, and I'm actually going to configure and upload the firmware to this and get it all dialed in. And then we should have a good running printer after that. That won't have weird issues with end stops or other things. So that's what we're doing, and we'll get going. First thing I'm going to do is remove the zip tie that's holding the SD card extension in place. That's the only thing that was actually making it work. Then I'm going to disconnect or unbolt the board from the frame. Place the new board in its position before I swap over all the individual cables. It's the easiest way to keep track of everything. The board is marked, so you can go just disconnect everything, but it's a
you might have to chase out a few of the cables. So this is the by far easier way. Now all of these plugs are actually indexed, so you can't flip them around. Some of the aftermarket stepper motors, they have just a universal plug, so you can flip them, which is nice if you want to change the direction of each individual motion. The biggest change in this board over the other one is they removed a couple plugs that were prone to failure and replaced them with screw terminals, which is by far a better solution. But just a matter of connecting up the wires.
Now before I go in with this thing, take it all the way to the house, we're going to plug it back in. And that's not a good sign. Why is that not picking up? Oh, there we go. Hey, look at that. Looks like we have a printer. Now, I'm going to move everything kind of out in the open here. And we're going to go and hit. Okay, that one worked. Okay, so it appears to have homed pretty good. Let's take it home all. Okay, so now this is working just as it should. However, it has no idea how big the bed is. I'll also probably need to fine-tune the step over and whatnot for this printer. But we for sure have a good working board that recognizes the stops, which is a step in the right direction for today.
Now this is about my third attempt to configure a firmware for this printer. I finally gave up and started loading the Skynet that I have on the lead screw printer, and then I'm just changing some of the values like the steps per millimeter and then the acceleration or the feed rates, maximum allowable feed rates. And then I also had to go and invert a couple directions, so I'm changing that to false and that one also to false. That affects how everything works, and I'm doing a quick compile just to verify that I didn't make any mistakes in this. And then I'm verifying that it's recognizing the board, which was a little bit of a headache getting that to actually recognize because I had the wrong port selected. But now we're uploading and away we go. And here I'm again just going to verify that everything moves in the correct directions. I knew all the steps per millimeter were good, but yeah, I'm just moving the heads and the bed just a little bit at a time. Unfortunately, my little fuzzball decided that it was time to go inspect the printer while I'm trying to work. She is really a kick, as she's laying right next to me while I'm editing this. Anyway, but the biggest thing that with a good firmware is it also has thermal runaway protection, which is something that was not enabled by default on the original board, which makes for it makes for an unsafe condition if, say, a hot end got unplugged. So this will actually be a safer printer in the end. For now, we at least got this thing running, so that's good progress.
Well, just to wrap all this up, the very first thing I printed was this little piece here, which doesn't look like much, but it printed really, really nice. So that was good. And then I moved on to a finer detailed print. It was this little piece that, you know, honestly I should have run on the other printer, which is what I'm going to be doing next. And it got about this far, and then the nozzle jammed. And mind you, I was printing 2 of them at a time, and then so I broke down. Instead of bringing this in and refilming it, I fired off my old desktop that lives out here in the garage, and then went through a number of iterations trying to get the firmware tweaked. And I actually have it where it homes really nice now, and tried it again. It got a little further with the last batch of firmware that I put on there, but it unfortunately still messed up just a little bit further down the line. So kind of just gave up, said, you know what, it's got to be a retraction issue, because I was running this thing really fast for such a small piece, and I think it's just causing the extruder to spaz out. But these ran overnight and came out just absolutely beautiful. So I have a feeling that it has something to do with the speed I was running, and what I was expecting out of the printer was just a little more than the components could handle. But yeah, it seems to be printing fine ever since then, and that's good news for me. So I do think because of where the extruder, instead of coming to the corner when it homes out now, it actually centers up on the bed. So I'm going to take and home it and measure and make sure we're dead center, because I might re-upload the firmware and fine-tune the offset so it's dead on the center of the bed. I don't care that it doesn't home in the corner, it really doesn't matter to me, but we'll get it to at least be in the right position, left to right, front to back. But that's about it. Catch you all next time.